Hi, well, with the new build there have been a lot of changes. Unfortunately, the greater blessings are not amongst those changes. There are a few changes to some core abilities, but it's mostly about the talents. Now, the functionality of certain talents may have changed a little bit. Sometimes it's because of the change in the talent itself, but mostly it's because of the change in where they positioned in the talent tree. Now, before I go through these individually, what I want to do is just point out something that I absolutely called straight away, which is that the attack speed buff on Zeal and Seal of Light have been replaced with haste. Um, this was always going to happen, realistically, because as I said, there's two reasons for this. One is it makes no sense to have an attack speed buff because nothing procs off our melee swings, and secondly, they did this with Seraphim anyway in Warlords of Draenor. Now, the thing to note here, before I go through them individually, I'll give myself Zeal and I'll give myself Seal of Light. Now, if we have a look at the moment, I have 17.46% haste. So let's just have a look here. Give myself that. 76.9, 105, 134.9 with my max stacks of Zeal. 134.9. That gives Judgement a 5-second cooldown. So, in actual fact, we could keep up Judgement all the time. We could keep up the Judgement debuff all the time with that, as long as we maintain those 3 stacks of Zeal and our Seal of Light. I don't think it's going to stay like that. Should we put it that way? I really don't think it's going to stay like that. But that's a tuning thing. So again, just as usual, it's far too early in testing for me to really worry too much about numbers and which abilities would use from a numbers point of view. It's purely from a gameplay point of view. So let's go through some of the changes to the talents. Excuse me, got a little bit of hay fever at the moment. The first tier has sort of stayed the same in terms of what's in it. Execution Sensor still does what it does before. Consecrate still does what it does before. Not sure if I mentioned in the last build, because originally this thing was healing as well as doing damage. Even from the last build, it just does damage now. This has changed a little bit, eye for an eye. You still wouldn't take it in a group PvE situation as far as I can tell, because you either have an AoE situation where you use Consecrate or single target use Execution Sentence. But as well as the counterattack thing now, this just gives you a flat up physical damage reduction. So 3 Holy Power, 1 minute cooldown, gives you a 35% reduction to physical attacks, as well as giving you this thing for 10 seconds that means you instantly counterattack an enemy that strikes you in melee for just under 30k physical damage at the moment. But this tier is largely unchanged. The next tier, Fires of Justice still does what it does. Crusader Flurry, as far as I can tell, still does what it does. Zeal is the main one, because as I say, it now grants you haste, instead of attack power. Other than that, though, it still does what it does before. And you would still take it in the same situations, except now, I don't know, would you? You have to wonder if you might take it. Let's have a look. 24,500. Over that. Crusader Flurry. No. Dear. Didn't mean to do that. You might even think Zeal for the haste buff. But as I say, the haste buff is likely to be a bit too large at the moment anyway. So you would think that when it goes live, they're going to make this do just in cleaved or AoE situations, and one of these two in single target. I'm sure they'll balance it around that. These seem to be unchanged, the crowd control ones, to the point where I'm not realistically Ever going to take that. You might get some use out of repentance in dungeons for crowd controlling a mob, if we ever get back to those days where you want to do that. But Fist of Justice mostly. Next tier, Virtue's Blade still does what it does. Blade of Wrath still do what it does, but I think the damage has been buffed a little bit on this. And the damage has been nerfed very slightly on this. Still to the point where you would use it in an AoE situation. But I think there was a danger that some people may have been using this in single target before. It has only been nerfed very slightly though. It's not massive. Now, here when we get down here is where things start to change a lot more. Final Verdict was down here. It competed with Holy Wrath. It no longer competes with Holy Wrath. If we don't want Seal of Light, we can now take Holy Wrath, which I'll look at in a minute. Final Verdict now competes with Equality and Mass Judgement. This is quite good for a couple of reasons. I looked at the changes, the data mine changes to Mass Judgement. First of all, looked at it and thought, oh, you can use this in single target now. Because not only does it mean your judgment affects all enemies within 8 yards of the target, but it increases the judgment damage. So that's even useful on single target. But of course now it's competing with Final Verdict, which is what you would want for single target. So Mass Judgement does become now an AoE talent. Equality, which has been improved a little bit because it's now got a 2-minute cooldown as opposed to 5 minutes. Equality now is not likely to be taken in a group PvP. Certainly not a raid situation, because why would you? Single target, you'd want to take Final Verdict. AoE situation, you want to take Mass Judgement. This was always going to be a strange one to try and get into a raid anyway, because to get maximum use out of it, you're going to have to stand in fire, say to your healers, hang on, don't heal me just yet, don't heal me just yet. Fire it off, right, heal me up now. That's just not going to happen. So now it's a straightforward case with this and this. You could still take this when you're soloing if you want, or if you're doing like dungeon trash or something, maybe this would be useful. But again, it means having to take loads of damage you don't really want to take normally. So Equality remains, or is reverted to a mad talent that we wouldn't necessarily take in group PvE. The next tier is now a utility tier, pure and simple. Divine Steed is most likely to be taken because that's just your movement speed increase, 1 minute cooldown. Divine Intervention is your basically cheat death. Now, there has been another little minor change that prevented some sort of fiddliness with these two. There were a number of people discussing the potential for... Because the thing with Equality is the more damage you take, the lower your health, the more damage it will do. So put yourself into a situation. How far do you let your health go? How risky do you make it before you fire it off? Well, with Divine Intervention, you could argue, then you could... What some people are doing, if you get it wrong and Divine Intervention procs, then you can use this straight away, except you can't, because Divine Intervention triggers your Divine Shield, which means that you've got Forbearance. You can't use Equality with Forbearance. Well, there was a trait in the Ashbringer tree, which of course, remember, we get all the traits eventually, which means Forbearance no longer applies to us, so you could still do that. No, they've changed it. Where is it now? There's a few changes to some of these as well. So instead of Forbearance going away, the duration is simply reduced by 10 seconds. So we will some abilities that cause Forbearance will always still cause Forbearance. It's just the duration will not last as long. So any little synergy between those two is now gone. But if you need a cheat death situation, you can use that. Divine Steed, just Divine Steed. Blaze of Light just does what Blaze of Light does. It buffs your Flash of Light. So you just choose whichever of those is going to be most useful to you. Then in the last one, of course, this is where this has been shaken up completely. So we can have Holy Wrath. Shall we try Holy Wrath? Now, as some people have noted, this is like Fists of Fury for monks, Windwalker monks. It can't just be spammed anymore. You can look at the damage it does. It's still sort of channeled. Still costs 3 holy power. It returns as much healing as damage. I'm going to compare it directly to the damage done here. It does more, but it's channeled over a much greater period now. It's channeled basically over 3 seconds, reduced by your haste. Now, of course, we can't get the haste benefit of Seal of Light from it. We can from Zeal, though, so let's just get ourselves max stacks of Zeal. I might have to just kill a couple here. So we've got here our 87.9. I'll just do another one of those to top that up. And then it's doing it over, channeling it over. Oh no, it went away. Over 1.6 seconds, so that's not too bad. You will notice you can't just use it whenever you've got Holy Power, though. It has a cooldown. Okay? Again, reduced by our haste. Might make it more useful now. It seems usable. Again, it's still on a single target, but it's potentially usable when you're going against tough mobs, because again, you can it's competing with now is Seal of Light. Now in a raid setting, you still think Seal of Light is probably going to be most useful now, because the movement speed buff is always going to be useful. 20% is not bad. 45 seconds to keep it up is not too bad. Using 3 holy power in 45 seconds, not too onerous, or realistic, probably more like 40 seconds. And then the haste, again, the combination of the Zeal haste and Seal of Light haste is giving us far too much haste. There is now no... Haste will have basically no value on our gear. What would we need it for? We can get 100... Well, probably by the time 110, about 150 haste or something or more, just from combining these. So the haste values will be nerfed, surely. But Holy Wrath now no longer becomes completely useless. Maybe when soloing harder mobs, I say. Maybe even PvP, even. So Seal of Light, I've already mentioned this with the Zeal. Seal of Light is likely to be the go-to talent in most cases, I would say. That is the one. Now, as soon as I'm allowed to start leveling again, which is not, I'm just going to check, because I am pretty sure that they haven't raised the cap for us. We're still stuck on level 108. Come on. Oh, I did forget to give myself my Seal of Light then, didn't I? Yeah, I'm not getting any experience. So, as soon as I do start leveling again, I will be keeping Seal of Light. I'll keep that in dungeons and all the rest of it, unless I don't like the healer, in which case maybe go for that. Word of Glory. Word of Glory was looking like a huge heal in a raid situation, because it healed everyone within a certain range. I think it was about 10 or 12 yard range for a decent amount. Meant if you had the whole raid stack up during high damage and you used that, you'd be doing massive amounts of healing. Absolutely horrendous. Now it's limited to 6 friendly targets and uses 3 holy power. Are we likely to use this? Is that a decent... I mean, that's going to, at the moment, looking like... it's not even the equivalent of one person's health, because at the moment I've got 1.1 million health. Yes, as I noted before, we have a lot of health in Legion. I am in quest gear at level 108, and I have over 1 million health as DPS. Aha! But anyway, so 6 lots of that is about... It's over 650,000 healing. If you manage to do it to the 6 friendly targets within 12 yards, if you manage to have that many, so not in a dungeon, but in a raid situation, potentially it can do 650,000 healing. That's a little over half a person's health. It's not a massive amount. Is it worth taking it over that? Good God, no. Absolutely no, it's not. That is not a stunning amount of healing. And it'd be spiky healing as well, because you'd have to keep building up 3 holy power to use it. You couldn't spam it. So that's the talents. So, as I say, not just talents that have changed. Well, hello. There's a paladin who's nearly dead here in a hall full of paladins. And there's only this guy trying to heal him. And I'm pretty sure he's healing him. He's a pretty crap healer. They're still nearly dead. Seriously. I healed myself. Oh, well, if they refuse to take healing, that's entirely their fault. So, the traits for our artifact weapon. I'm not going to go over any numbers that may have changed. Pointless to go over numbers because they're going to change so many times that they're of interest at the moment only to the theory crafters who have to feed back to the developers. There are a few that have sort of changed in concept. Now, where are they? We already mentioned this one before. This used to remove forbearance altogether. Now it reduces it by 10 seconds. 1 rank there. So unless there are relics with the trait on, and I wouldn't necessarily want that anyway, it's a 10-second reduction. This one, also a defensive one, used to reduce damage taken. At 3 ranks, it used to reduce damage taken by 10%, a flat passive 10% damage reduction. Similar to what we have now with the Glyph of Templar's Verdict, which I'd have quite liked. Now it reduces the cooldown of Shield of Vengeance. Not particularly happy about that. You know, because especially when Shield of Vengeance has a 2-minute cooldown, reducing it by 5 up to like 5 seconds or a bit more with the ranks, it's a very modest cooldown reduction. I'd have much rather taken the 10% flat damage reduction, I have to say. So I don't particularly like that change. And I think that's mostly it. Oh yes, this one has changed. The wording has changed very, very slightly on this one. This used to be if you were stunned. Unbreakable Will means that if you're incapacitated for more than 2 seconds, Ashbringer breaks you out of it. So if someone stuns you for, say, 6 seconds, then actually they'll only actually stun you for 2 seconds because your Ashbringer will take you out of it. But 2-minute internal cooldown on it. So if they stun you again straight afterwards, well, okay, there might be diminishing returns on it, but it will last longer than 2 seconds. Now it says when you're unable to act. So there's obviously a little bit of a distinction there. PvP players will know more about that. For me, I mostly think in terms of, well, if I'm rooted, that's not stopping me acting, so I don't think it will apply to roots. There are only really roots, snares and stuns that I worry about. And out of those 3, there's only really stuns that stop me acting. So I'm not entirely sure what that distinction means. And the rest of them are, again, numbers may have changed a little, but in concept, the rest of them are just what the rest of them were before. So those are the changes for the Ashbringer traits as well. And those are the changes to our abilities in this build. Again, apart from numbers, just in concept. So I'm going to go into some dungeons this weekend and see how these things play out, and I'll sort of report back then. But certainly at the moment, with the numbers as they are, I will be using Zeal for everything, I think, and Seal of Light, because the haste you get from them is stunning. I mean, literally, you can keep the judgement debuff up at all times. That is the key thing to take from it. I mean, I don't like whacking trainer dummies unless I can help it, but just to show you the concept here. You go away, you. Right, sorry, Ox. A bit better there. And judgment's up again, so I'm keeping it up at all times. As long as I'm favouring judgment, as long as I'm making sure I keep it up. And you don't necessarily have to have it overlap. Remember, judgment only increases the damage done by your holy power generators and consumers. So just make sure you use your judgment. You don't have to worry about it dropping off. Just make sure you use it before you use the next consumer. It doesn't matter on execution sentence, for example. If you need to cast execution sentence, then do so. See there, I used Blade of Justice, which I shouldn't have done. But in general terms, just use it. Oh my god. So they can't let us have these haste values. That is absolutely guaranteed. But while they are letting us have those haste values, obviously I'm going to use Zeal and Seal of Light. In single target, now we have a proper choice. It's Execution Sentence and Final Verdict. For AoE, it's Consecrate and Mass Judgment. No problem there. AoE also Divine Hammer. Annoying sound. I know. I mean, people keep saying, well, you turn the sound off. A lot of people keep saying they haven't actually played with sound ever. I like the sounds. I don't like this sound. I have to say, I don't like this sound. If you could turn this sound off, just this sound, I would be a happy person. This one just becomes you're going to use Divine Steed. Yeah, I'm just actually going to use Divine Steed. Maybe when you're soloing, but even when you're soloing like questing, you want that, surely. But if you don't, okay, you might take that to heal yourself up a bit better. This has the potential for a little bit of utility, but I mean, in this expansion, we've had like one fight where cheat death has been useful, haven't we? For rogues. And I don't know whether that would necessarily have worked for this version of cheat death. Just having a look, just in case. No, it's still effectively a 5-minute cooldown because it has to be able to trigger Divine Shield. In terms of this row, again, see, like, Holy Wrath is now more usable. If Holy Wrath was competing with, if it was in this tier, just competing with utility things, we would probably take Holy Wrath. Can't really see the benefit now because Seal of Light is now very powerful. But maybe once they've tuned down the haste values we get from it, maybe Holy Wrath will then look more favourable in certain situations. I do not believe those situations are going to include group PvE though. So that's what we're looking like at the moment with this new build. I'm going to be doing a couple of dungeons when I get time, today and tomorrow. So hopefully by the end of tomorrow I will have a gameplay video up of that. I'll be updating the website today as well with these with these changes. Such fun. And in the meantime, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. If you don't like, then comment please. And I'll see you later.